Welcome to World Soul again, and boy oh boy do I have a big fat stinker for you. This YouTube channel, which I've made to raise awareness of my claims against a Methodist University with unrelenting transparency and also support for my campaign and legal battle against Methodist University for alleged retaliation against a whistleblower for reporting a federal privacy violation to the NCDOJ and notifying multiple officials that I was doing so. Assume that every statement henceforth is alleged unless I explicitly state otherwise. I am exercising my First Amendment right to speech, my right to an opinion, and any half-witted attempt by an adversary to lice that right in part or whole shall be displayed publicly in full, as you have just as much right to speak as I do. And I welcome you to challenge me publicly as I am speaking on matters of public interest. My name is Daryl Latrell Vample, and I am a former graduate student from the Methodist University PA program who blew the whistle on a major privacy violation at Methodist University involving a diffuse breach of the PA program class of 2025 Social Security information. In my absence, release of this information without both my consent and other students' consent or authorization is a federal privacy violation under FERPA. Written consent. Such a violation is objectively measured by Provost Malley's own written admission. Within 13 days of me reporting to senior officials that I was reporting to the NCDOJ, I was then dismissed from Methodist University. 14 days after reporting to the NCDOJ, I was dismissed from Methodist University. And 5 days after receiving this big fat stinker by Suzanne Blum Malley, aka the Provost, aka the highest authority, I was dismissed from their hell pit. And so I found salvation at Methodist University, this desolate, godless place where dreams go to die and the devil looms unchained. It does appear after skimming through the vigorous and vicious and non-teat-suckling news outlets reporting and rallying through their less than half-baked truths that Methodist University has received accreditation for its medical school. I mean, come on. What if everything with the medical school accreditation process isn't as smooth and clean as it appeared? Those vigorously vetting outlets, in my opinion, did not report the full story. So once again, in my shacked up room, I am here to play the great value reporter because I do love Forever Records with a 15% discount. Here's the story. Methodist University received medical accreditation in the shadow of a lawsuit alleging retaliation for my reporting of a federal privacy violation and an open Department of Education complaint assigned to a federal caseworker mirroring the exact same allegations within my lawsuit and within the LCME's complaint. And yes, all of them raised concerns about the presence of both the provost and the president within the timeline of the allegations. President Stanley and Provost Suzanne, the two sitting and active senior officials who are largely the reason this dog and pony show even exists. And yes, to my surprise, we're both colleagues at a prior university, Columbia College, Chicago. Now, we shall be discovering some things about the university quite soon, but that doesn't mean we can't pick up the pieces along the way. Now, there's something you should know about the Provost if you're just tuning in, and that is that she admitted in writing that the PA program's social security numbers were mistakenly shared in a class. Breached, essentially. With that being said, let's cut out the red tape. More than the president, who I reported the social security number breach to 3 to 4 times, and who I now see clapping by his oaken stand, calling to push forward the future of Methodist. There are others we must thank for this glorious burial of transparency. The LCME. Now, who is the LCME? Well, I'll read you their definition, and then I'll tell you mine. LCME accreditation is a voluntary, peer-reviewed process of quality assurance that determines whether the medical education program meets established standards while also fostering institutional and programmatic improvement. To achieve and maintain accreditation, a program must meet the LCME accreditation standards. That's what they do, apparently. Our definition of the LCME's role. The LCME is a rubber stamp that greenlights institutions and the governance of institutions that passively admit social security number breaches, and after witnessing these same officials laid bare in an open federal complaint, and after receiving objective evidence of this violation upon which the same official who admitted the violation Suzanne Blum Malley, the Provost, remains sitting within the university. Now, this, in my opinion, is negligence of the highest magnitude, and I will soon be pursuing my own Department of Education complaint against the LCME on the basis of President Trump's reforming accreditation to strengthen higher education executive order and this federal statute, which essentially requires accreditors to report institutions that raise concern for Title IV compliance, which Methodist University is as it receives federal funding, meaning they too are regulated by FERPA and the Student Privacy Office. I think it is important to state that my lawsuit alleges retaliation for reporting the breach and some contract breach clauses or whatever. But what I'm not arguing here, however, is whether or not the breach happened, as it is objective and measurable in the Provost's own words. I do believe that negligence has a name, and while leadership always bears the brunt of responsibility, as that is what leaders do, and they also acclaim the power that comes with that leadership. So when I speak of the LCME, I speak to both the body and the chairs atop its mantle. With that being said, you get out here right now. LCME Chair Bradley E. Britigan, LCME Chair Bradley E. Britigan, MD, and Chair-elect Charles J. Lockwood, MD. You get out here right now, you gorgeous devils. Get out here and give the crowd what they want. You see, Bradley, or Dr. Britigan, as some may call him, the chair of the LCME, or as I like to call it, the Let's Corrode Empathy Committee. And on his shoulder, latched quite tightly, sits Charles Lockwood, or Dr. Lockwood or something. For professional reasons, though, as it seems that everyone around me is breaching social security numbers, sitting on breaches, and being praised for squatting on student privacy violations, and are being dubbed as the golden stewards of professionalism, why I must hold myself to the same standard by addressing the chair and chair-elect of the LCME with the respect that they deserve. Bradley or Brad or Charles or Charlie. Why I say titles come with the duty and responsibility attuned to the power. And when that duty is forgone, then all that is left is a name. Might I add as an aside that cover-ups only work when 1, your opposition doesn't have evidence, namely 24 exhibits filed in a lawsuit, and 2, when people are quiet, and I will not be quiet. There's too much here. Moreover, the LCME's complaint is filed in the lawsuit, meaning any retroactive claim of neutrality after your rubber stamp would merely be amassed to begin with in this accreditation process, this sham process. Now, it does seem like Bradley and Charles do miss my email, so I will be here for a while, and since they essentially have endorsed the same officials implicated in an open federal complaint, after receiving the open federal complaint and the Provost email before the LCME's vote, mind you, a Provost who admitted to a breach of social security numbers, I think it would do Bradley and Charles well to sit them nice upright with the rest of the peanut gallery. It does make for a nice family photo. I have to be honest, I am discombobulated that a nationally federally funded accreditation body thinks it can look at an executive order statute that bars them from encouraging state and federal violations and somehow believe their internal standards supersede the executive or federal policy in play. Of course, Bradley and Charles are more than welcome to take a position on this publicly. I'd even invite them to my rundown show to get their opinion. If I'm going to be here a while, I'm going to have to find some joy in doing this, and every speed bump I hit along the way for the next year or so, I'll be thinking of you two. Now, this is going to be a multi-part series. We've got the press angle, we've got the federal complaint angle, the secretariat angle, the breach angle, the standards angle, and Kurt angle. For this video, I think we're going to stick with the federal complaint Senate liaison angle with a dribble of the press since the university has just received accreditation. That seems appropriate. The press angle will be part 2. Now, here's a brief summary of the secretariat angle, which we'll dive into deeper on later videos. But the big kicker here is that the LCME received the Provost email, which admitted the Social Security breach in writing, along with dozens of other documents, which we'll pick through later. Then close the complaint in 8 days after initiating review, which in my opinion makes things next to impossible to actually thoroughly review the volume of, especially when I gave them 35 to 40 documents, closer to the 40 end of the spectrum. I think it's also important to note that they received the email from the NCDOJ, the letter that the NCDOJ sent to the university, saying that they did not receive notification that these numbers were breached, while also having the Provost email on deck. The LCME had both of these documents. Then 8 days later, closed the complaint. As of June 5th, I informed the LCME of my lawsuit, and 4 days later, on June 9th, They confirm receipt. This is after the closure of my complaint. LCME closed my complaint, but only when I transmitted to them the confirmation of my lawsuit, they confirm receipt in a failed attempt to CYA. My question for Brad and Charles is this: the consistency of claims in my initial complaint didn't veer from the claims in my lawsuit. So why did LCME only pretend to be serious after I sued the university? There's a lot of CYAing going on here, in my opinion. I'm going to do a whole video about this brush off pattern that national accreditors seem to be practicing and seem to think they can get away with, recusing themselves from remaining obligated to their statutory duty and renewed statutory duties due to President Trump's executive order, as well as the statutes already present. Here's the argument that I posed to the LCME. President Trump signed an executive order in April of 2025 titled Reforming Higher Education. I filed a complaint with the LCME in May, so the executive order was already active. I want you to turn your attention to Section 3, New Principles of Student-Oriented Accreditation. Part 1 here states accreditation requires higher education institutions to provide high-quality, high-value academic programs free from unlawful discrimination or other violations of federal law. This includes FERPA, unauthorization of personal identifiable information, right, without written consent, without written authorized consent. The LCME was well aware of these claims before they closed my complaint. 4, accreditors are not using their role under federal law to encourage or force institutions to violate state laws unless such state laws violate the Constitution or federal law. A state law that comes to mind, well, the NC Identity Theft Protection Act of 2005 and federal law, FERPA. Now, you must understand that this executive order enacted by President Trump is the same one that essentially eliminated DEI in universities. And yes, the LCME complied with this part of the executive order, and here's the proof of that. So why not the others? There's no claim of neutrality, or we didn't know because you greenlit the institution after receiving an open federal complaint and notice of a U.S. Senator liaison being established between me and the Department of Education. There is the federal complaint correspondence between the LCME and me, upon which I forward an email from the Student Privacy Office, September 17, 2025. A month out before they voted for accreditation of the university. And here's the tracking number. This came after a U.S. Senator office submitted an inquiry to the Department of Education. The LCME was well aware of this too. One excerpt from the FERPA complaint reads, tracking number 25-0823. Dear Daryl, our apologies for the delay in response time. Please be advised that this email intends to serve as confirmation that the Student Privacy Policy Office, formerly known as the Family Policy Compliance Office, has received your complaint form submission regarding the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Please note that this office addresses complaints in the order they are received. The LCME was given the exact same Social Security number spill that the U.S. Department of Education received about the Social Security number breach, but more importantly, they see that within this complaint that Provost Malley's email is referenced. The email they received before they closed their own complaint. You received the actual federal complaint, which mirrored the same documents and allegations in your closed complaint, the complaint that the LCME confirmed receipt of after I filed a lawsuit. If you look at my direct message to the Department of Education, you can see that attached to my FERPA complaint, which the DOE responded to in its entirety with the tracking number, is the Provost email in its entirety. I don't understand this. The LCME essentially received a mirror copy of the Department of Education's file before closing their own complaint. We'll get to the bottom of it for sure. Here's a notification that I sent to the LCME on August 29th, 2025, letting them know that a U.S. Senator's office would inquire about the status of my FERPA complaint submitted on March 18, 2025, to the Department of Education. Included in this message, which was transmitted to the LCME, within this document that I attached and sent to the LCME, is me quoting the Provost email word for word, bar for bar. First, Dean Gronsky and I are aware of a situation in September with the PA instructor who mistakenly shared information that included student social security numbers in one class in our secure password protected Canvas learning management system. We know that the error was immediately addressed by removing the document, ensuring that all students who had access to it for a very short time had also fully deleted the document. There was no breach or leak of sensitive student data. It was not shared beyond the protected system, but it was still shared. Therefore, the LCME knew that both at a state and federal level, that officials had received the exact same email by Provost Suzanne Blum Malley regarding social security number disclosure. Yet they greenlit Malley and they greenlit the university anyway. I must be honest, I believe the credibility issue is with the LCME. Days later, I forwarded the FERPA correspondence from the Student Privacy Policy Office on September 17, 2025. So one question for Bradley and Charles is, do you think compliance with federal law or state law is a suggestion? Does absolutely ignoring the fact that an open Department of Education complaint was open and active after you close your own complaint, which was transmitted to the LCME, does that encourage the institution to violate state laws unless state laws violate the Constitution or federal law? I see this as absolute grounds for filing a federal Department of Education complaint against the LCME to assess the validity of this accreditation process. I will say this though, my instincts were right all along from the moment they closed my complaint within 8 days, and my concerns with the LCME leadership have simply been validated. Let's put this at the forefront. The same officials, the president and the provost, are implicated in the timeline of my lawsuit, in the timeline of the federal complaint, and the closed LCME complaint. One of those three are not like the other. Now, this right here is going to blow your mind. This is an article published on the Cape Fear Valley website and essentially outlines the Batman origin story of this accreditation venture. The LCME might be more involved than I thought previously upon reading this. The article states Dr. Weirden and Nagalski worked on a preliminary agreement together and approached the Methodist University Board of Trustees, even pitching the idea together, which was unanimously approved. They're talking about the medical school idea. So, all right. Weirden's involved directly with the creation of the medical school. We know that. And we also know Provost Malley is, both who are on the timeline. But my God, look at this. The article continues. Methodist University Provost Dr. Suzanne Blum Malley has been involved in seeking accreditation and shared that while the process has begun for both regional and national approval, both will take a while to finalize. Who is the regional accreditor for the medical school? Well, that would be the Southern Conference, the SACSCOC. Who is the national accreditor for the medical school? That would be the LCME. Yeah, the LCME. What type of accreditation is Provost Malley in charge of pursuing? Bradley, Charles, Brad, Charlie? Do you have anything to say? The article continues. She continues. We're following all of the processes for that LCME accreditation of the medical education program that started in February when we announced this partnership and this plan. Prior to making the announcement, we had to submit a letter to the LCME declaring our intent to do this, and they then gave us what's called applicant status. The LCME accreditation process will take us through 2031, added Blum Malley. This administration will not likely be here through 2031. Provost Malley, the institutional representative seeking LCME and SACSCOC accreditation for the medical school, the administrator who admitted a federal privacy violation in writing, a diffuse breach of social security numbers, which the LCME saw was being actively reviewed by the U.S. Department of Education and tracked in September before their vote, who carries the written admission of the FERPA violation upon which the lawsuit is concentric around, at least with regards to the claims of retaliation and public policy, and who, may I add, was a prominent focus of the LCME complaint that the LCME closed in 8 days, then confirmed receipt of after I filed my lawsuit. That official has been greenlit by the LCME. The LCME granted accreditation that was being sought out by the highest academic officer involved in pursuing accreditation with the LCME, Provost Suzanne Blum Malley. They greenlit her during an active lawsuit. Bradley Britigan, Charles Lockwood, LCME, you will have a lot to answer for. Did you think I would not find this? Did you think I would not question you or bring this before the public? I question everyone and everything. I always have and I always will. Brad, Charles, the chair and chair-elect of the LCME, and the LCME as a whole, what did they do this past fine Friday evening, October 17, 2025? They punted objective evidence, rubber-stamped accreditation, and greenlit the university just like old bureaucrats cut from shanty cloth. For those who forget, let's put the Provost email up right here. This is what the LCME greenlit. First, Dean Gronsky and I are aware of the situation in September where a PA instructor who mistakenly shared information that included student social security numbers in one class in our secure password protected Canvas learning management system. We know that the error was immediately addressed by removing the document and ensuring that all students who had access to it for a very short time had also fully deleted the document. There was no breach or leak of sensitive student data. It was not shared beyond the protected system. Social security numbers were shared mistakenly, meaning without consent, followed by a less than lethargic attempt to, in my opinion, bury it by saying there was no breach or leak of sensitive student data, after you just said social security numbers in one class were shared diffusely. Stop the tomfoolery. The article continues. She also added that when the physical building is complete, the SAC-SCOC will send representatives to tour the facility to approve it as well, since it will be located off of the MU campus. Southern Conference, mark my words, you will get your day too. I want to know how deep this rabbit hole goes. Moving forward, the absolute hubris that Bradley Charles and the LCME must have in their big runkled and cronkled white coats to look dead at a Department of Education complaint that mirrors their closed complaint, look it dead in the eye and essentially flip the bird while they knew the office of a U.S. Senator was acting as a liaison between me and the Department of Education, evaluating the same claims with the Provost. Even after they received notice and objective proof of these circumstances well prior to the preliminary accreditation vote. In my opinion, negligence is too kind of a word. And if I'm remiss, then I implore the LCME come out publicly, deny me Bradley Britigan and Charles Lockwood. Moreover, we should note that according to LCME's website, Bradley Britigan is the Dean of Nebraska Medical School, and that Charles Lockwood is the Vice President of USEF Health and Dean of USF Health Morsani College of Medicine, and the LCME chair-elect. So get in where you fit in, or you might not fit in the chair at all. These are your leaders, people. Get a very good look at them, because you'll be seeing them very often across this series. The chair and the chair-elect of the LCME, the National Rubber Stampers of America, first only to the CCNE and SAC-SCOC. But we will get there much later. How any student is to remain protected under this system, including the future PA students and medical students, I'm sure I don't know. I do think this calls for a medical school audit for the medical schools accredited under Bradley's reign, which from their official site appears to have started not too long ago. And to me personally, it does seem that accreditation bodies are essentially favoring optics and superficial images over duty to adhere to their standards, as well as their statutory duty. I will speak more about that when we get to Board Chair Rakesh Gupta, or rather the immediate past chair. An abrupt switch, which due to the timeline in which it occurred, may raise some concerns about back channeling, which will ultimately be verified hopefully when all of this is over. To close, let's push forward into the tree-hugging half-truths. So we've got CBS 17, Fayetteville Observer, and Greater Business Fayetteville reporting on the accreditation woo, puff pieces, bright look toward Methodist future, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is nowhere near over, and perhaps even worse, because now the university is taking in medical school applicants' money, while the same people who helped fundraise the money and get accreditation are A, either going to be deposed before next summer when it opens, or B, getting funneled into Discovery before the medical school opens in the summer of 2026. And somehow the LCME said, let's greenlight this. It's baffling, people, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my lawsuit will get dismissed. And I think I might add, yes, likely the people who think they are sitting above this are not sitting above this due to their own policies. I think you know who you are. I'll be honest, they must be betting every ounce of their strength on getting a judge to dismiss a lawsuit with the Provost admitting a social security number breach in writing that's filed, and perhaps getting him to overlook me getting dismissed 5 days after she sent this email, the dismissal letter being signed by the same two people who were on the Provost email thread, Dean Gronsky and PA Program Director April Martin. Of course, everyone has their right to assert their claim. Maybe there's something there that I'm not seeing. But if there is anything I can tell you, you do not know how bad I want my day with a jury. You do not know how bad. I'm not going to entertain the fluff of the news articles, but I want to focus on the Greater Business Fayetteville article here and concentrate solely on one section. Before this, it's important to note that the LCME has had its hands on the same documents the Department of Education has had its hands on, actually maybe even more documents, of course, including the Provost email. For those who would assert that the PA program students have nothing to do with the medical school, I would point you towards this. This is President Weirden's comments on October 17th after receiving accreditation from the medical school. This is going to have a halo effect that will be beneficial for everything else we do at Methodist University. For all of our programs, because this changes the nature of who we are. We're now a university that has a medical school, and that's a big, big thing. And that brings lots of attention nationally. Oh yes. And it generates interest. Students want to go to schools like that. Yeah, they see those as quality schools. And we've known for a long time we're a quality school. This kind of puts a stamp on it. And didn't you put that stamp on it, LCME? Now pay attention here. We're going to take a really strong interpersonal approach with this, where we make sure that the medical school students are also working with the PA students, the physical therapy students, occupational therapy, nursing, etc. One of the issues in medicine for a long time is professionals not talking to each other, and so we're going to model that with the way we educate our students, added Weirden. The president of Methodist University, Stanley, who is entangled with an open U.S. Department of Education complaint, which Bradley Charles, the chair and chair-elect of the LCME and LCME, had their eyes on weeks before voting to rubber stamp Methodist University, and who I reported this privacy violation to 4 times without any direct response from his office, the president's office, is still actively sitting there and leveraging the PA students who have yet to tell me that they've received formal notification, as underlined under the NC Privacy Act of 2005, to add to credibility to their rubber stamped medical school. That's it, people. This is the dog and pony show circus that Bradley, Charles, and Methodist University are running. If you may, a circus. And I do pray humbly for my day before the people and the day I am able to finally speak before the court. This is a part 1 of LCME's expose, s'il vous plaît, and that complaint angle is secure. I will likely be saving this video for the Department of Education complaint against the LCME as well, and I do think that Bradley and Sir Charles need to be sitting before an oversight committee with the emergence of this information. Next, we'll examine what articles the LCME was notified about prior to accrediting the Methodist University program, and the donor angle of the story as we push forward. This is going to be a long journey because we've got a slew of accreditation bodies and parts to traverse here, people. I don't think I'm running out of content anytime soon. Weekly uploads may actually become a thing depending on how I'm feeling. Now, if you feel right to donate to the cause and help source legal funds to wrangle this wild dog, you will find a GoFundMe and Cash App linked below in the description. You can read the story, know the story, and become a part of the story by supporting the cause. Every penny and every dollar supports the cause. Also, leave a like to flood the algorithm. Tech stocks are down, by the way, so you be careful out there. Moreover, if you like YouTube video essays with a less than doom and gloom tone, I will point you to my channel, Fiction and Reality, where we are at a whopping 716 subscribers. You go over there, you go check it out. Let your friends know what it's about. Question everything, question everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.